everyone, I'm Brandon. Welcome to my channel, Books in the Shire. I've been meaning to film this video for quite some time. I was going so strong in January with my videos, and then I just got busy with school, and then I got COVID, and then I went on vacation. I was COVID free when I went on vacation, I promise. February was a crazy month for me, so I just did not film. I didn't read that much either. It was just... yeah, it was a month. I'm gonna combine my January and February wrap-ups together in one video just because I don't see the point in doing two different videos when I only read 3 books in February. So if I'm looking down, I'm looking at my tablet, so just ignore that because it has all my stats and stuff. In January, I read 7 books for a total of 2,622 pages, so I started the year off really strong. I was really proud of myself. I listened to 49 hours. Most of the books I've read are like audiobooks, so that number's gonna be high. And the average rating was 3.28 stars, so it was pretty decent. There were a few low-rated ones on this list, which we will get to, but let's just start talking about the books I read in January. The first book I read in January was Shatter Me by tahereh mafi. I've already talked about this book a bit briefly in my series I'm not going to be continuing video, so if you want to know a bit more about my thoughts, you can go there, but I'll talk a bit about it here. But yeah, I gave this 2 stars. It was not fun for me. So it's from Juliet, the main character's perspective, and I really hated that. I think if this was third person, it would have been 10 times better. I wouldn't have disliked it so much. I don't know how so much can happen and so little can happen at once. Because Juliet just is talking to herself in her head most of the time because it's inner monologue and none of it is productive, but then something will happen really quickly, but in her head she's like, oh, and that happened. And it's like, wait, what? It was bad. It was not good. I did not enjoy it. The second book I read in January was Legend by Marie Lu. I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I really liked the characters. I liked the plots a lot. I mean, it's classic dystopian, so there's always going to be 2 people come together, not necessarily romantically, but they come together to fight against an oppressive society. And even though that's how dystopians always are, it was still really well executed in this book for me. It was never okay, I know where this is going. It was always oh, what's gonna happen next? It was a really emotional book for me too. I don't really cry when I'm reading, but I cried when I was reading this because this doesn't spoil anything because it's in the synopsis, but the main character, her brother dies, and that just it hit me. And every time she's recalling his death and everything in the book, I'm like, damn, that hurts. It was, I don't know, it just made me really emotional, and I don't get emotional in books, so that was kind of refreshing, and I really enjoyed that. The next book I read in January is The Book Jumper by mechthild. I think I'm pronouncing the author's name correctly. I gave this book 4 stars. I enjoyed it. I think maybe upon reflection I might give it a 3 star. I don't know. This was a 5-star prediction book for me. Everything about the synopsis just sounded like something I would love, and the story had so many fantastic elements that I loved, and it was so magical and something I had never experienced before. But I think what brought it down for me was the characters, but in particular the main character. Nothing was necessarily wrong about her. I was just kind of bored by her. I don't know. I really enjoyed elements, and I really enjoyed overall plots and stuff, but I think there were just minor choices in there that really I didn't enjoy, so that's why I'm kind of conflicted on my rating. But I would definitely recommend this to people, and I might reread it just because it was so magical and different that I just loved it. So yeah. Next, I read Scarlet by Marissa Meyer. I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I think definitely I enjoyed Cinder more because I think Cinder's a more likable character than Scarlet. I really was loving any scene that had Cinder in it. I was always eating it up, yes, oh my gosh, give me more. But whenever it was Scarlet, I was just she's a little whiny, she's a little annoying, and I understand why she's whiny. So that's why I kind of could forgive it sometimes, but at other points I was just not totally invested in her story, yet she's the main character of the book. So that was kind of difficult, but I think despite her being an annoying character, the plots and everything were really good, and obviously the world building's done really well. That's why I'm continuing with the series. I just really loved it, and I'm excited to read Cress because that just sounds so good. I love the connections that Marissa Meyer has made throughout the books, so I'm just really excited to see where it goes. Next, I read Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. I gave this book 4 stars. It was really good. I can totally see why there's hype around it. Not necessarily that the plot was, or the synopsis was misleading. I think I interpreted the synopsis differently because there were elements to it that I was like, oh, that's different than I thought, but like not in a bad way. It was just not what I was expecting. I think the reason I thought it was misleading is because most of the story takes place at this like, it's not technically a boarding school, it's like a summer camp, but that's where most of the story takes place, and I wasn't expecting that going in. So for me, that just kind of took me a second to adjust to, but once I got adjusted, I really loved it. I loved the world that the author had created. Amari was a really great main character. She was flawed, but in all the right ways, if that makes sense. This is going to be a spoiler, so if you don't want a spoiler for this book, you can skip ahead. I'll put like a little timestamp in there, but it's called Amari and the Night Brothers. So you would assume the Night Brothers are like the main villain, but honestly, I did not feel that way. I thought that they were just there and such wasted potential, and I'm sure they will come back in other ways in a future book. But oh my god, they were so intriguing in the very beginning, and then at the end I was like, that was so lame. And I wish that they had done like a minor level, how do I explain? I wish this book had solely focused on Amari trying to figure out what happened to her brother and her like learning all about the supernatural world, and nothing to do with the Night Brothers, just they were mentioned by name but you didn't know anything about them. I think that would have suited the book better. Next, I read Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade, and I gave this 2 stars. I was really excited because it has a fat main character and like fat representation, and it talked about like in the beginning it talks about like the main character's difficulty with being fat, which I can totally relate to. It was really nice to see that in a book, but I think the author kind of simultaneously overused that the character was fat, but also ignored that the character was fat. I think a lot of the scenarios were unrealistic to me. It's like, okay, yeah, people can accept you because you're fat, but I think there was too much acceptance, if that makes sense. I don't know. I mean, this is just from my personal experience of being fat, so that's what I know. Everyone else has different experiences, so that's totally depending on their own. But for me, it just felt too accepting at times, and it's like, it just felt unrealistic. I felt like too, the conflicts in the book, not just with the 2 main characters, but the conflicts the characters had with anyone else, were a little immature at points and childish. It just like was a bit unbelievable for me, so I just was really not liking that. And I got to a point in the book where I just didn't want to keep reading, but I was invested to see where it went, and I was unfortunately disappointed. I just like didn't really care all that much. I think if you're looking for fat rep, it might be a good book to pick up because it does have fat rep in it, and like I said, it's all circumstantial, so someone may connect really good with this book, but I just didn't, so that's why. The last book I read in January was Bruja Born by Zoraida Cordova. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is the second book in the Bruja Witches series, or Brooklyn Brujas. So it's about witches in Brooklyn, and I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 3 stars. When I read the first book, it was I think 2 or so years ago at this point, and it definitely read younger when I was reading it, but I kind of like let that slide, I think, because I was so invested in the story. But this one read the same age as that one did, and I think it's definitely geared towards like 14, 15, 16-year-olds maybe. I'm 24, so it just like didn't completely mesh with me. So that was kind of hard to like think of it in a different perspective, but I think once I got there, I was really enjoying the story, really enjoying the plot. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say. It was a good book. Definitely would recommend it, but I think there were definitely some moments where it just read too young for me, and I guess plots were a little too expansive for what the world was. So now let's talk about all the books that I read in February. I read 3 books in February totaling 726 pages, so not that much. 2 were graphic novels. I listened to 12 hours of books. Yeah, and then my average rating was 4 stars, so it was a pretty good month. The first book that I read in February was Avatar: The Last Airbender: The Rift by Jean Luen Yang. This is, I believe, the 3rd graphic novel in the Avatar series. I don't know, but I gave it 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. This is, I think, my favorite of the ones that I've read so far. It was just really well done. It talks a lot about colonization and how, you know, people steal resources that weren't theirs to be able to build cities and towns, and this town is built on those stolen resources. So it was a really interesting story to read about. And then also too, Toph and Aang have like a feud kind of in it, because Toph is kind of okay with colonization and then Aang is against it. So it's really interesting to see the two points of view and them like constantly in arguments trying to be like, well, I'm right, you're wrong, you know, all that stuff. It was just, I think, really well done. Chef's Kiss, absolutely love it. Would totally recommend these graphic novels if you're into Avatar. Even if you're not, I would recommend picking them up just to see if there's something for you, because I think they're really well done. The second book that I read in February is The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi. I'm so sorry, Roshani Chokshi. I'm hoping I got that right. But this is the first book in a trilogy, and I gave this 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was something I had never read before. Like, it's so different from things that I typically read. Yes, it's a typical YA fantasy, but I think the characters are so different. I think the plot lines are different. I think the world, the atmosphere is different. It just like, it stands on its own. I know a lot of people compare it to Six of Crows, and I would not compare them, because yes, they're both heist stories, but like not in the same way at all. Totally would recommend this. Really excited. I am excited to keep going with the series because I've only heard great things. The final book I read in February was Invincible Volume 1 Family Matters by Robert Kirkman. This is a comic series. I think it's from an indie comic company. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But there was recently, like a year or so ago, an Amazon TV show made about these comics, and I loved that TV show. I rewatch it like all the time just because I need background noise. But so I was like, oh, I should probably read the comics for it, and they happened to be on Scribd, so I picked it up, and it was really good. This happens in the first volume. It's like, or first issue. It's like 20 pages, so I don't think it's really a spoiler, but if you don't want to hear it, you can skip ahead. But you find out really early on that he's invincible, and I already knew he was because I've seen the show, but like, it felt unearned. It felt like the first volume should have been like, get to know Mark, get to know his family and all of that, and then the second issue is when you find out he is invincible, he's taking on this mantle, but you didn't have that time to get to know his character or anything, so that kind of took me out of the story a bit. And then I felt like his mom was really undercharacterized. Like, there wasn't a lot of depth to his mom's character yet, and like, Sandra Oh is the mom in the show, and it's Sandra Oh. Like, the mom is just so good. So I was like, she's so bland in the comics. I'm sure she'll be better as the series goes on, because I'm gonna keep going with it. But it was just definitely something I had to adjust to. I do think that the show had a bit better pacing than the comics. Again, comics are quick, they're short, so they typically go by a lot faster. But I think there's definitely moments where you can take time to relax and focus on the story in comics instead of just going go, go, go all the time. And I wish that this had done that a bit more, where it took a step back, took its time to like explain a scenario or explain what Mark's thinking, and then went on, instead of just constantly moving forward. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe, and comment down below like your favorite book that you've read so far this year. I think mine has been The Rift.